Hi, Justin. Lee Eckley here. How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Nice backdrop. I like that. Where are you?
I'm in Toronto. I'm in my
Yeah.
my little music room.
Yeah. Okay. Is that at home or do you have a little dedicated space?
No, this is at home.
Very nice. Very nice. And where's home these days?
I'm in Vaughan, Ontario.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I know Vaughan, Ontario. It's the city above Toronto.
Well, I'm not too far away from you. You guys are in Oshawa, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah, we're pretty close. Yeah, probably about 30, 35 kilometers or something like that. Every time I drive up to Vaughan, I always remember it's a bit of a trek. You know, I always forget. And I hear they're going to be opening up Wonderland this year on the weekend of May 14th. So we got our fingers crossed. But I know you have bigger plans in mind for springtime, I hope too, right?
I don't know, man. I mean, Wonderland's pretty dope. Like, I usually get a season's pass every year, so
Oh, good
when-
for you. Okay. Fabulous. So interesting times, but let's go back to your interesting background. So born and raised in Vaughan or Toronto, or do you just say Toronto to keep it just to keep it simple?
yeah, I mean, I'm born and raised in Vaughan, but of course, for the people outside of this great city, they don't know what Vaughan is, so I just say Toronto.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. Where did you go to school?
I went to school. I went to high school at a place called Westmount. It's in I guess it's in Thornhill. Um, and that, I mean, it's been all the schools are in this area. So I didn't actually finish high school, but that's where I went.
Yeah, yeah. Before we get into you not finishing high school, what were the things that kept you interested there?
Oh, geez. Friends.
Yeah.
I was never interested, to be honest with you. I mean, from the moment I started, like in grade 9, I knew that I wasn't going to finish. I mean, something inside of me always knew I was going to leave to do music at some point. I guess you could say I was pretty confident in myself. Um, at the time, I probably should have finished looking back now, but there was really nothing that I really enjoyed about it except for the social aspect. I pretty much skipped a lot of classes. I wasn't a troublemaker. I never have been, but
But you just kind of kept to yourself.
yeah, I just, I would basically skip class with my buddies and we would go and listen to records at like friends' houses, like in between classes or in the morning or after school, whatever. My mom dropped me off and then I'd do my own thing.
And so I presume this is around the time that you started playing.
Yeah, I started playing when I was in middle school, actually. I picked up the guitar when I was about 11 years old. Um, and I've been singing since I was about 8 or 9, pretty much. But of course, in high school, that's when you get to meet your first sort of cluster of musicians. And that's
Mhm.
where I guess you could say you get your legs playing with other dudes for the first time. So that was cool, actually getting to play with other people. I owe high school a lot for that, especially when they have like all their like Winterfest things and like concerts in our atrium and all that kind of stuff. So that was a good start, a good place to start for sure. I'd be in
So
a
when you
choir.
started, so when you started singing when you were 8 or 9 years old, was this church choir? Was it to the radio? Was it to records?
It was just to songs on the radio. I mean, I was a huge and still am a Kiss fan growing up, and I used to just sit down at home and try to learn as many Kiss songs as possible. And I just really wanted to be like Paul Stanley. And it kind of came to be that I sort of got into musical theater and all that kind of stuff when I was young, and all the school plays and all that jazz. And like coincidentally, I would start getting the lead roles, and I didn't know why. And I guess lo and behold, I figured out that I could sing at some point. But it really started with musical theater, I guess, if you want to be if I'm completely honest about it.
So you could have drifted into musical theater. Instead, you did something without the life support system. You decided to quit school and run out and do it on your own. I don't know if, as a parent, if it would be something that I'd recommend offhand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my parents were too happy with the decision, but they supported me wholeheartedly, and I'm just grateful to have such a great family that supports what I do, and it's paying off, which is great. But at the time, it was obviously a much more destructive conversation.
Yeah, what kind of conversation is that around the dinner table? I mean, mom, dad, I'm 16 years old. I want to quit school and I want to be a musician who traditionally don't make any money.
Right, right. Well, of course, it wasn't one big conversation. It was a bunch of little conversations that sort of cultivated into what eventually happened. But I think at some point they just accepted the fact that I really didn't care about my education. I wasn't putting my head into anything that was actually gonna, you know, that was gonna amount to much because my grades were slipping. I had no other interests other than music, and they saw how passionate I was. And I think at some point they realized that with or without them, I was going to do this regardless. So they sort of folded and let me do my thing years ago. I mean, it must have been like 6 or 7 years ago that I dropped out of high school. But, I mean, it's been a journey, but it's paying off. So they can't yell at me now.
Well, there's a lot to be said for an education, and as you get older, you might find that it's something you want to go back to. However, saying all of that, what you have learned in the last 6 or 7 years, you don't acquire with any MBA from the best schools in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like, it goes back to the thing, like, street smarts, school smarts, whatever you want to, book smarts, whatever you want to say. But I've definitely had quite a bit of experience, and, leaving school that young definitely influenced the way the music sounded, and the way the record turned out, because I needed to live some life to really be a real, I guess, rock artist or whatever that means. Being 16 years old, what the hell do I know about anything? And going out and being on my own and getting to live in New York and LA and all these places when I was so young, the experiences were so profound that it just changed my whole worldview. And I'm thankful for that, because nothing would have turned out the way it did if I didn't have those experiences.
Now let's talk about the first experience moving to New York. You were 16, 17 years old at the time. Did
Yeah.
you just go by yourself with a suitcase and dig your feet in? I mean, how does that work?
I was lucky enough to have a mentor at the time, who's a killer songwriter that had been in the business for a long time, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he was very detrimental in the conversation with my parents, about letting me go and doing the thing that I had to do. So I was living with him, and his partner, and we were writing songs together. He kind of taught me how to write songs. And it's funny because he was from a more country pop world, not the rock world at all. He didn't know much about that stuff, but I owe him a lot of my pop sensibility, because I've always wanted to make songs that are catchy but still, rocking, and you need that sort of push and pull, that yin and yang of the pop and the rock to have I guess a good concoction, or a successful outcome in what I believe to be mainstream rock or whatever.
And how long did you last in New York?
We didn't last very long in New York, just because of the limitations you get being in a shoebox apartment in the sky. Basically, you can't make a lot of noise. Um, so being a singer, every time I opened my mouth, people would be knocking on the door telling me to shut up. So we had to get out of there. And like I said, I was lucky enough to have an amazing mentor that had a place in LA. And we decided the best move would be to go out there, just for more opportunity as well, because putting a band together in New York, it didn't seem possible at the time, especially with getting spaces and renting out rooms and all this kind of stuff. It just seemed a lot tougher, and my mentor knew a lot more people in LA that could help out with that. So I ended up going to LA for about 3 years. I was out there, eventually, of course, leading me back to Toronto. All in all, getting signed out there, and then the label's based in New York, and it was like, all right, well, I don't need to be here anymore. I might as well go back home.
Good for you. And how did you like California lifestyle?
It's beautiful, man. I mean, you can't really complain about the weather or anything like that. The people were okay. I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to be like stereotypical here, but I did sort of run into that like LA fakery that people talk about a lot, and there was a lot of superficial people out there that I met that were sort of, I don't know how you say this. They were just climbing the ladder. It was like social climbers, I guess you could say. And being so young and impressionable, I see the best in everybody, and I didn't really expect to be, treated the way I was treated in certain relationships, I guess you could say. But I was definitely given a dose of real life when I was out there. And it was cool. Listen, I go back any day just for the weather and the food and all that kind of stuff. And the music scene's obviously great. It's cool to be there and experience like the Sunset Strip stuff and like seeing where all that stuff sort of blossomed. But at the end of the day, like Toronto's my home, and it always feels like home when I come back. This is where my family is, um, and through, I'm just grounded here. So all roads led back to here.
Good for you. And you can, when things start to clear up, hopefully within the next 6 to 10 months or whatever, you can bounce from one place to another without any problem like before. But there's no place like home.
Right, of course, there never is, man.
Yeah, that's great. How did you find the band? The band smokes.
Thanks, man. Thank you. I found them in New York City because that's sort of where everything's based for me. That's what the label is, like I said, and most of my team is. It's funny, when I recorded the debut record, I didn't have a band at the time, so I recorded it as a trio with just two of my buddies playing bass and drums, and I played all the guitars. And when it came time to shop it around, obviously we were like, well, I need a band. We can't do this without a band. And I have a killer manager who's been in the music industry for like 20 plus years and has worked with everybody and been around the block. And she just kind of helped me make the connections and look for the dudes that we needed to find. I mean, it also helped that her partner at the time was a Broadway bass player, and he knew a bunch of people in that world. And we found our bass player Nick through Broadway because he was a Broadway bass player. Like I said, my manager's partner was a Broadway bass player, so he recommended him. We found our guitar player Kyle through a professor at NYU in the music program. We just like cold emailed him, and he said, I got the guy. Like, we gave him a description, rock band, whatever, here are the songs. And he recommended Kyle. And then Nick, our bass player, he brought in the drummer Russell because they went to high school together and been playing for like nearly a decade. So it just gelled. I mean, the first time we were all in a room together, it just made sense. And we've been playing together ever since. It's been two and a half years now.
Good for you. That's nice to have a rhythm section that's already built in, eh?
Totally, man. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's like if you have a rhythm section that knows like each other's groove and has been locked in like that for so long, it just makes it that much more powerful.
Yeah. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought for 1 second. And I wanted to talk about the first record which you recorded in Brooklyn. That wasn't is that the same spot that Matt Mays recorded? Do you know? Because I know he worked there for a long time.
Well, the studio was called Studio G. I'm not sure if that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he did it in Brooklyn because that's like the biggest studio in Brooklyn, I believe. Okay. Of course, there's a lot of big studios in New York, so I don't really know for sure.
Yeah. The record was recorded pretty much live off the floor, and that doesn't seem to be in lockstep with the cut and paste method of the way things are done on a lot of rock and pop records now.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't mean to do that deliberately. The producer we work with, Joel Hamilton, he kind of insisted that's just the way he does things. And when I showed up, he like showed me the tape machine. He's like, all right, this is it. I'm like, what? Hold on. Let's take a step back here. Like this is what we're doing. He's like, yeah, this is how we do it here. I'm like, okay. And of course it brought the best out of us as musicians because you get one shot, man. So you better make it count. And of course, there's a flow to the record. There's a push and pull. Nothing is like perfectly on time. Nothing is like, perfectly in tune. There's a little bit of warble, like tape sort of like saturation stuff that you don't get recording to the computer. And it was cool, man. It was a really, really cool experience. And it definitely makes for a different sound, at least I think. It gave it a lot more, a more organic thing than you see these days.
Yeah. And a little more breadth. You can hear it in the grooves that people are actually listening and maybe feeling a little bit of tension for fear of having to start over again, let's say.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I think it's cool because like, the choruses and the verses on the record, it's like the verses are always a little bit slower than the choruses because like we're all moving together, there's no click track that we're playing to.
Nice, nice.
which is cool, you know, and I've always wanted to play like that. That's how records that I love were made. And not that that's the right way to do it. It's just another way to do it.
Yeah.
And I just love records that were made that way. You know, I think if you're going to play your stuff live, you should be able to play it in the studio exactly the same way. So that's why we did it the way we did.
So everything is a little bit on hold right now. What are you doing to keep your mind and your chops sharp?
Well, I'll never stop playing guitar. I
Mhm.
play every day just because I love it. And I'm writing songs, you know, like here and there. I'm trying to write stuff just because we have the time to do it. I'm actually working on a new EP um, that hopefully we're going to release, you know, a couple months. I don't really know when, but we are working on new music together. Obviously, remote with the limitations that we have, but obviously with today's technology, it's totally possible. Um, and other than that, man, I'm just like watching a lot of TV, watching a lot of, you know, Netflix, and you know, like everybody else.
What are you binging on these days?
I just finished Breaking Bad again for the second time because it's the
Oh,
best
cool.
show ever.
Yeah.
I love that show, and I put myself through it again. And it was amazing. I'm watching The Boys right now, um, which is pretty wicked, and I just started Stranger Things because I never watched that.
Okay. Did you get into Better Call Saul at all?
Yeah, I finished it. The last season, like I don't like how they put the seasons up on Netflix like a year after they air or something. So I haven't watched the last season yet, but I've seen it up until I think the fifth season. Really
Okay.
wicked.
I got to tell you, watch the last season, and the last episode will have you on the edge of your seat.
Okay, I'm gonna do it for sure. I love that show.
Tell me about Broken Love.
Well, you know, we're like everybody said so far, we're just a new rock band. I guess not so new anymore. But we've been kicking around for about 2.5 years. We're just a real organic raw band that's trying to bring rock back to the forefront.
Mhm.
Um, in its like in its natural way, the way that it had been done back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. We're not trying to keep anything too slick or overproduced. We just want it to be real and in your face and authentic. You know, and we got a new single out right now. We got Crushes on the radio.
Yep.
You guys are pumping it, and I thank you for that. And you know, we're gearing up for what's to come after this pandemic, but we're gonna come back swinging harder than ever.
Yeah. And Crush comes from some personal experience, I hear.
Yeah, it's in a nutshell. I wrote it from the perspective of somebody else who had a little bit of a drug problem, should you say? And
Mhm.
the song is essentially detailing the experiences of this person going on like a week long bender, basically, and you know, not seeing the sun for a couple days, and not eating, not sleeping, and just sort of tripping out because they're falling so deep into their own addiction. And the song essentially is about, you know, asking for help if you're going through those problems. And also, you know, taking the liberty of checking on your friends and your family, because obviously right now mental health is declining like all over the world because of the situation that we're in. And you know, people need to look out for each other, and that's essentially the message we're trying to get through with that song.
I often wonder if the isolation makes people look deep down inside, and if they wonder if they like what they see.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a self-reflective time.
Mhm.
And of course, it doesn't help anybody that we're not only are we stuck inside of our houses all the time. I mean, you're stuck inside your head pretty much like 24/7 these days. So it's hard to get out of that. But, you know, in the position that we are in as a band that puts music out in the world, it's sort of our jobs, I think, to give people something else, you know, something to distract them, something to believe in, I guess, and feel good about when they listen to it. And that's sort of why we put this song out, why we put everything out. Really, I just want people to feel something, to sort of have this like escapism when they listen to our music.
On that note, I'll let you go. I know you have some more stuff to get to. Thanks a lot. We'll meet in person sometime soon, I hope.
Sure, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Justin from Broken Love. Thank you.